Most people don't fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. They fail because they wait. And while they wait, life moves on without them. Today, you and I will break that cycle. Right here, right now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a message for anyone who has ever felt the quiet pull of delay, that subtle whisper that says, "Let her not now." It is the oldest thief in human history. It steals potential, it steals years, and if allowed, it steals lives. But what is remarkable, what is profoundly hopeful, is that the moment you decide to act, its power dissolves. You see, procrastination is not a problem of time. It is a problem of clarity. When the mind is foggy, action feels heavy. But when the mind is direction, action becomes almost automatic. A ship does not hesitate when the captain knows the destination, and neither does a person who has chosen a definite purpose. There is a timeless truth that has echoed through every age, every culture, and every success story ever written. Action is the great sculptor of destiny, not intention, not hope, not desire, action. When you take the smallest step toward your goal, no matter how insignificant it may seem, you awaken a force within yourself that has been waiting patiently. Momentum begins as a whisper, and before long it becomes a roar. The most successful men and women are not the ones who felt motivated every day. No, they are the ones who acted even when they didn't feel like it. They learned a simple secret: start before you're ready. Act before you feel inspired. Move and inspiration will follow. If you wait for motivation, you'll live a life of waiting. But if you begin, just begin, the very act of moving will generate its own energy. That is the strange paradox of progress. We don't get energy before we start. We get energy by starting. And so, the question becomes, what can you do right now? Not tomorrow, not tonight, not in a moment of ideal conditions. What action, small, humble, immediate, can you take this very minute toward the life you desire? Clear your desk, write the first sentence, walk the first step, make the first call, set the first plan, because the first step transforms a dream into a path. And the path, once walked daily, becomes your new identity. You and I live in an extraordinary time. Opportunity is everywhere. Never has it been easier to learn, to create, to grow. The only barrier that remains is the invisible wall we build in our minds, the wall of postponement, the wall of maybe later. But walls crumble the moment you decide they no longer belong in your life. Clarity is one of the rarest and most powerful forces available to a human being. Most people drift through life not because they lack ambition, but because their ambition is undefined, unfocused, and unshaped. A mind without clarity is like a camera without a lens. Light enters, but nothing forms. And so a person wakes each day with a strange heaviness, not from fatigue, but from not knowing what direction deserves their energy. When you decide with precision what you want, life stops feeling like a battle and begins to feel like a mission. The moment you define a goal with unmistakable clarity, something remarkable happens within your mind. It begins organizing your thoughts like a disciplined librarian, placing each book onto the correct shelf. Confusion fades. Hesitation loosens its grip. You suddenly find yourself aware of what matters and uninterested in what doesn't. The mind loves instruction. It thrives on direction. Give it something specific to aim at, and it will gather ideas, resources, and energy with astonishing efficiency. But leave it wandering, and it becomes restless, scattered, and easily seduced by distraction. A clear purpose pulls you forward. It removes the weight from your feet and replaces it with intention. Tasks that once felt overwhelming begin to lose their power over you. Instead of wrestling with procrastination, you begin to feel a natural inclination to move. It's as if clarity switches on a long, dormant engine inside your spirit. You find momentum where there was once resistance and certainty where there was once doubt. Life becomes simpler, not slower or easier, but more directed, more meaningful, more aligned. Most people never realize that procrastination isn't laziness, it's the absence of a defined endpoint. When you don't know exactly where you're going, every step feels uncertain, and the mind resists uncertainty more fiercely than difficulty. Give the mind a clear objective, and you remove the fear of the unknown. You replace it with confidence. You replace hesitation with structure. Think of a sculptor beginning work on a block of marble. If he has no vision for the figure inside, he chips away aimlessly, unsure of whether each strike is progress or destruction. But when he sees the finished form clearly in his mind, every movement becomes exact, deliberate, and meaningful. The same is true for you. The clearer your image of success, the more every decision begins to align with it. Clarity is not found, it is created. It is the product of sitting quietly with your thoughts and asking yourself with honesty, what do I want? What matters? What am I willing to pursue with devotion? When you answer these with precision, you unlock a power that begins to push back the fog that once surrounded your life. And in that moment, procrastination loses its strongest ally. The uncertainty that allowed it to thrive. Real progress, is rarely the result of dramatic leaps or sudden bursts of brilliance. It is the quiet accumulation of small actions repeated with sincerity day after day. Most people overestimate the importance of a single moment and underestimate the power of consistent movement. They wait for a grand opportunity, a surge of motivation, or a perfect day. Yet the truth is profoundly simple. The smallest step taken daily will always outweigh the largest intention left undone. Great success is nothing more than ordinary effort applied consistently over an extended period of time. Think of the way water shapes rock. A single drop appears insignificant, almost laughably weak. But that drop repeated thousands and then millions of times can carve canyons and reshape landscapes. So it is with the human spirit. A single act of effort, done once, makes little difference. But repeated faithfully, it alters the course of a life. It strengthens your habits, shapes your character, and builds a momentum that becomes nearly unstoppable. The world honors consistency more than brilliance, for consistency is what makes brilliance possible. There is a powerful psychological shift that occurs when you commit to small daily actions. You no longer wait to become the person you want to be. You begin acting like that person immediately. You send a signal to your mind that the journey has already begun, and in doing so, you awaken capacities that have long been dormant. When you write one page, make one call, study 10 minutes, walk a single mile, something in you changes, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants to improve and begin seeing yourself as someone who does improve. Every giant achievement in human history is the sum of tiny, almost unnoticeable victories. The skyscraper rises one brick at a time, the novel emerges one paragraph at a time, the master becomes a master through years of seemingly insignificant practice. The world sees the finished product and calls it remarkable, but the individual who built it knows it was never one act. It was thousands of small acts completed when no one was watching. Small actions also remove the intimidation that often leads to procrastination. A large task feels overwhelming, a small task feels approachable, and once you complete a small task, you create momentum. Momentum is a force as real as gravity. It carries you from one action to the next with ease. A person in motion tends to stay in motion, and before long, a single small step grows into an entire day of meaningful effort. There is tremendous dignity in doing something small, simple, and purposeful each day. Over time, these modest actions accumulate into a life of extraordinary consequence. They become the invisible strokes that paint the masterpiece of your destiny. Discipline has always stood as one of the most reliable companions of achievement, far more dependable than the fleeting spark we call motivation. Motivation is a visitor, welcome when it arrives, inspiring when it appears, but unpredictable and inconsistent. Discipline, however, is a resident. It builds a home within a person and remains long after emotion has faded. Those who depend on motivation alone often find themselves moving in short, sporadic bursts like a ship drifting with the tide. But those who develop discipline move with purpose, direction, and continuity regardless of the emotional weather of the day. There is a great misunderstanding about discipline. Many believe it is a harsh taskmaster, something rigid, cold, or restrictive. Yet discipline is in truth a gift, a quiet agreement you make with yourself. It is the acknowledgement that your long-term desires deserve more respect than your short-lived impulses. It is the decision to act according to your highest intentions rather than your momentary moods. And when you learn to honor this agreement, you discover that discipline doesn't take freedom away. It gives freedom back. It frees you from regret, from wasted time, from the ache of unfulfilled potential. Every person who has accomplished anything of lasting significance began by building discipline in small, unremarkable moments. It is in choosing to start when it would be easier to delay. It is in finishing a task when comfort invites you to stop. It is in saying yes to growth and no to distraction. These moments accumulate quietly, unnoticed by the world, but deeply recognized by the soul. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, they build a foundation strong enough to support any dream. Discipline transforms a person because it teaches them that they can trust themselves. When you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you strengthen your inner authority. You begin to walk with a different posture, a deeper confidence, a sense that you are capable of shaping your life rather than being shaped by it. You become someone who does what needs to be done whether the sun is shining or the sky is stormed over. And that consistency, that unwavering steadiness becomes a superpower. Motivation will ask you to wait until you feel ready. Discipline teaches you to begin even when readiness is nowhere in sight. Motivation relies on emotion, discipline relies on decision. Motivation whispers, if you feel like it. Discipline says, Do it because it aligns with who you are becoming. And it is this difference that separates wishful thinkers from those who create tangible results. There will always be days when enthusiasm is low, when circumstances are not ideal, when the spark inside you seems dim. Those days are not setbacks. They are opportunities to strengthen the muscle of discipline. When you act in those moments, you reinforce the truth that your direction is chosen not by emotion but by intention. And with each such action, you become a person capable of moving steadily toward a future of your own creation. Every human being is shaped far more by their environment than they care to admit. We like to think of ourselves as independent, unmovable, guided only by our inner compass, yet even the strongest compass can be thrown off by the wrong surroundings. The truth is simple and timeless: environment influences behavior silently and constantly. It nudges your actions, colors your thoughts, and gently tilts the trajectory of your days. You may not always feel it, but you are always responding to the world around you. Change your environment, and you change the nature of your choices. Look closely at the spaces you inhabit. A cluttered desk encourages a cluttered mind. A distracting room invites distracting thoughts. A phone overflowing with notifications pulls you endlessly toward diversion. Yet a quiet corner, a clean workspace, a well-lit room, they have a remarkable way of calling your attention toward your better self. Most people wrestle with procrastination and wonder why their willpower feels so fragile. But willpower was never meant to fight an environment designed for delay. The environment must support your goals, not sabotage them. Consider how a gardener prepares soil before planting a seed. He does not yell at the seed or demand that it grow through sheer force of will. Instead, he enriches the soil, removes the weeds, ensures the sunlight will reach it, and protects it from pests. Only then does he place the seed into the earth, trusting the environment to do its work. Your goals, your dreams, your plans, they are seeds, and your environment is the soil in which they live. If the soil is poor, it is not the seed that is at fault. Strengthen the soil, and the seed grows naturally. When you carefully choose what surrounds you, you give yourself an immense advantage. Place reminders of your goals where your eyes easily find them. Remove the temptations that derail your focus. Keep tools of progress within reach and obstacles out of sight. Make the desired behavior the most convenient behavior. Human nature always gravitates toward ease, so arrange your surroundings so that moving forward feels natural and delaying feels inconvenient. The people around you are also part of your environment. Spend enough time with the unmotivated, and their habits seep quietly into your own. Spend enough time with those who strive, those who seek growth, and you will feel yourself rise to match their altitude. We become reflections of the company we keep, echoes of the conversations we hear, and products of the expectations placed upon us. Curate your circle with the same intention you use to curate your goals. There is great power in shaping the world around you to reflect the world you want within you. When your environment supports your intentions, effort becomes lighter and progress becomes natural. In such surroundings, procrastination loses its hiding places and motivation becomes far easier to access. By designing the landscape of your life with care, you quietly set the stage for your best and highest self to emerge. There is a remarkable truth about human behavior that very few people ever pause long enough to understand. The first 5 minutes determine almost everything. Those early moments, the ones right after you decide to begin, carry more weight than most of the hours that follow. The mind is a master negotiator, always seeking comfort and avoiding discomfort. And it is in the opening minutes that this negotiation is won or lost. If you can move your body, your thoughts, and your attention in the right direction during those first few minutes, the rest of the journey becomes far easier. But if you hesitate, if you allow the mind to wander or delay, the task grows heavier and the resistance strengthens. When you begin something immediately, without debate, you interrupt the mind's natural habit of postponement. Most procrastination doesn't come from difficulty, it comes from delay. Delay allows doubt to rise, excuses to multiply, and distractions to creep in. The human mind is astonishingly creative when inventing reasons not to start. Yet the moment you take action, real physical action, you silence all those reasons. Action disarms resistance in a way that thought never will. There is clarity in movement and energy in momentum. And these elements are most powerful at the beginning. Those who accomplish the most are not necessarily more talented or more fortunate. They are simply quicker to act. They understand that the longer you wait to start, the harder everything becomes. But if you start at once, even clumsily, a profound shift occurs. The mind falls into alignment. The body follows. The task that once seemed heavy begins to feel manageable. The resistance that once felt overwhelming loses its authority. It is as if the universe itself rewards a person who decides without hesitation. The first 5 minutes are also where identity is shaped. Every time you act immediately, you reinforce the belief that you are a person of action, a person who follows through, a person who does not allow comfort to dictate the course of your life. This quiet internal shift grows stronger with each repetition, and before long you begin to trust yourself more deeply. You know from experience that once you start, you will continue. This trust becomes a foundation on which confidence, discipline, and resilience are built. Beginning instantly also eliminates the need for willpower. Willpower is fragile, it burns quickly and fades. But habit, initiated consistently in the first few minutes, becomes automatic. When you train yourself to launch into motion without thought, without negotiation, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of convincing and persuading your own mind. You move because movement has become your nature. There is tremendous power in simply beginning. Not in being perfect, not in being prepared, but in taking those first few steps with quiet determination. When you start immediately, you harness a force far greater than motivation. You harness momentum. And momentum, once awakened, becomes one of the greatest allies you will ever know. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must understand that identity is not merely a description of who they are, but the architect of who they become. You behave in accordance with the kind of person you believe yourself to be. If you see yourself as someone who hesitates, you will hesitate. If you view yourself as someone who struggles with follow-through, you will struggle. But the instant you shift the image you hold of yourself, your habits begin to shift as well. Identity is the silent master behind every choice, action, and pattern that shapes the course of your life. Most people attempt to change their actions without ever changing the identity that drives those actions. They try to act disciplined while believing they are inconsistent. They try to take initiative while believing they are easily distracted. They try to build habits while believing they are the type of person who breaks habits. The struggle isn't in the action, it's in the identity conflict beneath the action. You cannot act in a way that contradicts your self-image for very long. Eventually, the old identity pulls you back like a tide returning to shore. But something extraordinary happens when you begin to see yourself differently. When you say, not just in words but in belief, I am a person who acts. I am a person who follows through. I am a person who does what needs to be done. You shift the very foundation on which your habits rest. This new identity begins to express itself naturally. It requires less force, less effort, less negotiation. You act because the action is consistent with who you believe you are. Identity is built through evidence, and evidence is built through small, repeated actions. Every time you do something aligned with your ideal self, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. One vote is not decisive, but many votes accumulate into certainty. The identity strengthens, the internal dialogue changes, and the world begins to treat you according to the way you treat yourself. You rise to match the expectations you set for your own life. A powerful truth emerges once this shift takes place. You no longer pursue success, you behave like someone who succeeds. You no longer try to be disciplined, you become disciplined. You no longer push yourself to move, you move because motion is now part of your nature. Identity turns effort into expression. It transforms discipline into instinct. It converts intention into character. You are not trapped by who you have been. You are shaped by who you decide to be. And the moment you choose a higher identity, your habits, choices, and direction begin to align with it as naturally as a river follows its course. Friction is one of the quietest yet most powerful forces influencing human behavior. It is the invisible resistance that makes simple tasks feel impossibly heavy and ordinary actions strangely difficult. Most people assume their struggles come from a lack of motivation or willpower, but more often than not, the true culprit is friction, those tiny barriers that sit between intention and action. A cluttered desk, a misplaced tool, a dozen steps to begin a task, or even the presence of tempting distractions can turn a clear goal into an unnecessary battle. Remove the friction, and suddenly the task that once felt overwhelming becomes effortless. Human beings naturally choose the path of least resistance. This is not a flaw, it is a fundamental part of our design. The mind seeks ease, the body seeks comfort, and together they gravitate toward whatever requires the least effort. When starting a task feels complicated or inconvenient, the mind begins crafting excuses with astonishing creativity. Yet when the first step is simple, accessible, and friction-free, you find yourself moving forward almost without thinking. The key then is not to demand more effort from yourself, but to reduce the effort required to begin. Consider how elegantly this principle works in every domain of life. A person who lays out their workout clothes the night before is far more likely to exercise. A writer with a clean, ready workspace is far more likely to begin typing. A student with organized notes is far more likely to study without delay. These small adjustments don't change the task itself. They change the ease of beginning it. And beginning is everything. Once you start, momentum carries you further than motivation ever could. Removing friction also means eliminating the temptations that compete with your focus. The phone that vibrates beside you, the open tab on your laptop, the television remote within reach. Each of these adds invisible friction to the task you want to complete and removes friction from the distraction you want to avoid. If you make procrastination easy, you will procrastinate. If you make progress easy, you will progress. It is as simple and as profound as that. By adjusting your environment with intention, you design a life where action comes naturally. You no longer need to push yourself through layers of resistance each day. Instead, you set up conditions that quietly guide you toward the behaviors you desire. You become the beneficiary of a system built to support your growth rather than undermine it. Friction is not conquered through force, it is dissolved through design. When you remove the small obstacles that stand between you and your goals, you discover that the greatest challenge was never the task itself, it was the unnecessary resistance surrounding it. And once that resistance is gone, movement becomes the most natural thing in the world. Simplicity has always been one of the most underestimated virtues of a successful life. People imagine that achievement must be complicated, layered with intricate systems, advanced strategies, and sophisticated routines. Yet the most remarkable truth, seen time and time again, is that greatness is built on the simplest habits repeated with quiet consistency. Complexity breeds confusion, and confusion breeds delay. But simplicity brings clarity, and clarity awakens action. The mind performs best when its path is straightforward, uncluttered, and unmistakably clear. Life becomes easier the moment you remove the unnecessary. When you strip away the noise, and the obligations, and the endless options that pull your attention in a dozen directions, you create space for your true priorities to breathe. A simple routine is not a limitation, it is a liberation. It frees you from the endless decision-making that exhausts your willpower. It reduces the mental burden of trying to juggle too much at once. And in that freedom, you discover a remarkable strength, the strength to focus fully on what matters most. The human mind thrives on rhythm. When you follow a simple daily structure, you eliminate the constant inner debate about what to do next. You wake up knowing your direction. You begin your day with intention. You move through your tasks with a calm sense of order rather than a frantic sense of chaos. Simplicity gives rise to momentum because it removes the clutter that slows you down. It transforms your day from a battlefield into a clear, open road. Consider the way successful individuals operate. Their routines, when examined closely, are rarely complicated. They rise early, plan their day, dedicate time to their craft, protect moments of quiet, and end their evenings intentionally. These are not extraordinary habits. They are simple acts practiced every day. Their power lies not in their sophistication, but in their consistency. A simple routine followed faithfully will outperform a complex routine abandoned quickly. Simplicity also strengthens discipline. When the steps you must take are clear and few, you are far more likely to follow through. When your goals are broken into small, manageable actions, they feel more reachable. And when your mind is not burdened with excessive choices, your energy becomes available for meaningful work. The simplest structures often lead to the most profound results because they remove the friction that causes resistance. Your life does not need more complication, it needs more intention. It needs fewer scattered commitments and more focused effort. It needs a routine rooted in clarity, designed to bring out your best rather than overwhelm your mind. When you embrace simplicity, you make room for excellence. You allow your thoughts to settle, your discipline to strengthen, and your progress to unfold naturally. And in that simplicity, you often find the very power you thought you lacked. Purpose is the great energizer of human life. When a person knows why they are doing something, even the most demanding tasks become lighter, more meaningful, and strangely easier to endure. But without purpose, even simple actions feel heavy, tedious, and unimportant. The human spirit was not designed to move without direction. It was designed to follow a calling, a reason, a driving intention. When you connect your work, no matter how small, to a deeper purpose, you awaken a wellspring of motivation that cannot be manufactured through force or willpower alone. Think of how a traveler moves when he knows exactly where he's going. His steps are firm, his pace steady, his mind focused. Every mile, though tiring, carries a sense of progress. Contrast this with the traveler who wanders without a map. Every step feels uncertain. Every direction seems questionable. The same distance, the same effort, but an entirely different experience because one has purpose and the other does not. So it is with your goals, your daily habits, and your life itself. Purpose transforms effort into fulfillment. Energy flows naturally toward what matters to you. When you align your actions with your deepest values, you no longer need to push yourself forward, you are pulled forward. There is a quiet power in knowing that what you are doing contributes to something meaningful. Suddenly, waking early feels intentional. Staying focused feels noble. Saying no to distractions feels like honoring a promise to your future self. The mind becomes sharper, the heart becomes steadier, and the body finds strength that once seemed out of reach. Most people struggle not because they lack ability, but because they lack a reason strong enough to ignite their abilities. They move through life reacting rather than leading, drifting rather than directing. But once a person identifies a purpose that resonates, inspires, and calls them upward, they tap into a reservoir of motivation that replenishes itself. They no longer ask, "Do I feel like it?" Instead, they ask, "Does this bring me closer to what I am meant to become?" Purpose also protects you from the subtle traps that drain your vitality. Without purpose, distractions look appealing, temptations look inviting, and procrastination feels harmless. But with purpose, you recognize these for what they truly are: detours that steal your time and dilute your potential. Purpose sharpens your awareness and strengthens your discipline. It becomes the compass that guides your decisions, the anchor that steadies your emotions, and the fire that fuels your persistence. When your work aligns with your why, fatigue becomes more manageable, setbacks become lessons, and obstacles become challenges to rise above rather than reasons to quit. You discover that motivation is not something you chase. It is something you generate by living in harmony with your purpose. And once you feel that harmony, even the ordinary moments of your day take on a new sense of significance. Action is the antidote to doubt. It is the great equalizer in the human experience, separating those who dream from those who achieve. Most people spend far too much time analyzing, thinking, and worrying, believing that clarity or certainty must precede movement. Yet history proves the opposite. Clarity and confidence are born from action, not before it. The act of beginning, no matter how small, shakes loose the chains of hesitation and awakens a momentum that thought alone can never generate. Every step taken forward is a vote for your own courage and a signal to your mind that you are serious about creating the life you envision. Doubt is insidious because it thrives in inactivity. When you delay, the mind fills the void with questions. What if I fail? Am I ready? Will this work? And with each passing moment, uncertainty grows until it becomes a wall between you and your dreams. But the moment you act, even imperfectly, that wall trembles. Action exposes the truth: most fears are smaller than imagined, most obstacles surmountable, most limitations self-imposed. It is movement that illuminates the path, not endless contemplation. The human mind is a remarkable instrument. It can strategize, plan, and predict, but it is also designed to respond to experience. You learn more from doing than from thinking about doing. Every action provides feedback, every attempt offers insight, and every result, success or failure, teaches a lesson that no theory can convey. The person who waits for certainty may never move, but the person who begins immediately gains wisdom, skill, and confidence with each forward motion. Action is, in essence, the teacher of mastery. Moreover, action transforms perception into reality. It signals to your subconscious that you are capable, that you are willing, that you are committed. Doubt cannot survive in the presence of repeated, purposeful action. Each time you act, you reinforce the belief that you are a doer, someone who creates results rather than merely wishes for them. This internal alignment between thought and deed builds resilience, focus, and an unstoppable drive that becomes self-reinforcing. Consider every accomplishment in human history. The scientist who makes a discovery, the artist who finishes a masterpiece, the entrepreneur who builds a business. They all begin with a single action. They do not wait for perfect conditions or flawless preparation. They move, learn, adjust, and move again. Action ignites the spark, propels the momentum, and bridges the gap between imagination and reality. Every step taken dissolves hesitation, every effort strengthens confidence, and every attempt teaches the lesson that success is always one action away from doubt.